My name is Hannah Greystone, and I'm 32 years old. To the outside world, I had everything: an accomplished career, a New York apartment, polished smiles at family functions. But inside, I was nothing more than a ghost in my own home. I had built a steady career in corporate branding over the last decade, worked with top clients, and recently been promoted to lead strategy director at a boutique agency in Silverbridge, a mid-sized coastal city known more for retirement than ambition. But none of it had ever been enough. Not for my father. I dreaded our annual family reunion dinner more than I ever had. This year, I was carrying something more than just the weight of expectation. I was carrying a document in my purse that could change everything. I had bought my father a luxury SUV as a peace offering, something sleek, brand new, and far more expensive than I should have spent, nearly $95,000. But money wasn't the point. It never had been. The real cost was emotional. And this year, unlike all the years before, I had quietly armed myself with a truth that would finally explain why I had never been enough for him. You see, when I was growing up in a grand house tucked into one of Silverbridge's oldest neighborhoods, everything looked picture-perfect from the outside. But behind the thick wooden doors of our brick colonial home was a power dynamic that none of my friends ever imagined existed in our perfect family. My father, Gerald Greystone, had built a luxury furniture manufacturing company from scratch, starting with a garage and a few borrowed tools, turning it over 30 years into a multi-state supplier for hotels and high-end resorts. He believed in order, reputation, and legacy, and everything in our house was filtered through that lens. Emotions weren't encouraged. Performance was. From my earliest memories, I remember that he never once helped me with a school project or read me a bedtime story. Instead, he was the one who looked over my shoulder at report cards and asked why an A- couldn't have been an A+. When I placed second in a debate tournament, he said, "Second just means you're the best loser." It wasn't cruelty in his voice. It was something colder. Calculated disappointment. My mother, Evelyn, was the opposite when she was alone with me. She had a soft touch and a gentler tone, especially when Dad wasn't around. But in his presence, she shrank. Her entire demeanor would shift. She would smile less, talk less, and always glance toward him before answering any question. She never challenged him, not even when it came to us, the kids. I had two siblings, Max, my older brother by 3 years, and Leah, my younger sister by 2. Max was the perfect firstborn. He played soccer, dated all the girls from the right families, and joined Dad's company straight out of college. Dad's alma mater, no less. He was always one step ahead of what Dad wanted. His timing, his language, even his laugh seemed tailored to impress him. Leah had something else: charm. She wasn't overly ambitious, but she had the kind of easy likability that could melt tension. She knew when to joke, when to disappear, when to step in. She could make Dad smile, even after a long day. She was the only one who could lighten the room when Dad's voice took on that critical edge. When he'd lash out at me, she'd knock gently on my door later and say, "Don't take it so hard. That's just how he is." But me? I always seemed to guess wrong. I pushed for success, but in all the wrong ways. I was the one who turned down the family college and chose my own path. The one who didn't go into the family business, but instead moved out, pursued a career in marketing and branding, and started from the bottom, sleeping on an old college friend's couch in New York, applying to job after job. When I finally landed my first gig at a small local agency, my father just said, "Let's see if you can last more than a month."
I didn't just last.
I climbed. 8 years later, I was one of the youngest creative directors in the region. I had just been promoted again last month, and my income had finally tipped into 6 figures. I'd bought my own apartment in downtown Silverbridge, paid off my student loans, and had finally been able to afford the one gesture I had dreamed of making for years. I bought him a brand new custom-built SUV with every premium upgrade he once mentioned admiring: heated seats, tan leather interior, navigation panel, panoramic sunroof. It cost almost a full year of my salary.
Why?
Because some twisted part of me still hoped that maybe, just maybe, this would be the year he'd finally say, "I'm proud of you, Hannah." But what I didn't know was that buried in my purse, An envelope with my name on it and results I had requested just 6 weeks ago was the real reason why he never could. And it was a reason he may have known all along. I had convinced myself that the car would be enough. That this massive, unnecessary gesture would somehow slice through the years of distance between us like a hot knife through cold silence. I spent 3 weekends preparing, not just choosing the perfect dress, but rehearsing how to act like I wasn't desperate for his approval. The dress I chose was a deep forest green wrap gown, not too loud, not too plain. A name-brand designer my mother once said my father respected. I paired it with subtle gold jewelry and a pair of nude heels that cost more than my first month's rent back in New York. Everything about me had to say, successful but not flashy, feminine but serious. In other words, I was still dressing for him. The same nervous rituals had repeated every year for as long as I could remember. And every single year, I'd left that reunion with another invisible wound, another joke at my expense, another dismissal masked as constructive feedback, another compliment handed out to Max or Leah while I watched from the corner. But this year wasn't like the others. This year, I had a truth in my purse that had taken root like a thorn in my chest. I had ordered one of those Ancestry DNA kits just for fun, curiosity mostly. I want to know if my dad's side of the family really did have those Swiss roots he boasted about. But when the results came back, they didn't match the Greystone heritage at all. Confused, I took it a step further. During a weekend visit home, I'd snuck into the master bathroom and plucked a few hairs from my father's brush. I sent them to a private lab. The results came back with a simple, undeniable conclusion. Gerald Greystone was not my biological father. I stared at the page for almost an hour the night they arrived. Not shocked, really. Just hollow. It was like confirmation of something my soul had always suspected. All the strange little moments, the way my father looked at me like I was a stranger, the complete lack of warmth, the comparisons, the deliberate undermining of every success, suddenly they made sense. Not right, but explainable. I hadn't told anyone. Not my best friend, not even Leah. I kept the envelope sealed and hidden in my purse, unsure what to do with it. I wasn't even sure I would ever use it, but I couldn't bring myself to leave it behind either. Just knowing it was there gave me a strange, uneasy power, like a match in a dry forest. The night before the reunion, I drove the SUV from the dealership to my parents' house. It gleamed under the fading evening light like something out of a commercial. The sales manager had walked me through every detail. I'd even had a small nameplate added inside with my father's initials. A final personal touch. One last plea to be seen. I timed my visit so that Mom would be at her yoga retreat. I didn't want this moment filtered through her mediation. I wanted it raw, just me and him. I pulled into the driveway and checked my reflection in the mirror. Smooth hair, steady lipstick, calm smile. Everything in place. He opened the door wearing his weekend uniform. Pressed polo shirt, beige chinos, loafers without socks. His brows furrowed when he saw me. "You're early. The reunion's tomorrow." "I know," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "I brought you your Father's Day gift. I wanted to give it to you privately." He glanced at the small box I held in my hand. Inside was the key fob with the signature logo of the luxury SUV. When he opened it, he blinked, just once, and then the emotion vanished behind his usual critical expression. "Is this a joke?" "Come look," I said, guiding him toward the driveway. He stood there in front of the gleaming vehicle, arms crossed, scanning every inch like he was appraising a piece of machinery for defects. "How much did this cost?" he asked after a long pause.
Don't worry about it.
"I got a raise." I smiled, holding my breath. He didn't say thank you. Instead, he walked around the SUV twice, pointed at the wheels, the trim, the roof rack. "You shouldn't be wasting money like this. Are you leasing it or did you actually buy it?" "I bought it." "With your own money?" My heart sank.
Yes.
"It's yours. I thought it might be something you'd enjoy." He didn't smile. "Not really." He nodded once, then drove it down the street for a test run without asking me to join. When he returned, he parked it not in front where guests would see it, but in the side garage, behind the old Honda CR-V.
Hidden.
We stood in the garage in silence for a moment. Then he said, "Well, I suppose you're doing okay. If you can throw money away like this." He walked back into the house without another word. I stood there staring at the SUV like it might suddenly vanish. My face burned with humiliation. I had spent nearly $100,000 and all I got was a half-hearted critique and a guilt trip. Back at the hotel, I called my best friend Nina, trying not to cry. "He hated it," I whispered. "He didn't even say, thank you." "You should have kept the damn car," she said sharply. "He doesn't deserve it, Hannah. He's never deserved you." I laughed through my tears. "Maybe tomorrow will be better." She paused. "Promise me you won't show him the test results." "Not unless you're ready for everything to explode." "I won't," I said. And I meant it. But deep down, I knew I was lying. The morning of the reunion felt like a performance day. I woke early, even though I hadn't slept much. My eyes were puffy, my nerves raw. But the script had to be followed. Dress up.
Smile.
Be charming. Pretend this was just another family gathering. As I drove toward my parents' estate in the northern hills of Silverbridge, I rehearsed answers to the questions I knew were coming. Are you dating anyone? Do you ever plan to have children? What exactly do you do again? I had responses prepared for all of them. Witty, polite, and completely detached from the truth. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I turned onto the long, tree-lined driveway. The house stood at the top like a museum. Manicured lawn, oversized pillars, flags on both sides. And of course, the shiny SUV I had gifted him yesterday was now parked front and center, visible from the street, perfectly angled for admiration. So he had moved it. The bitterness curled in my throat like smoke. I stepped out of my car and adjusted my dress. The air smelled like roses and cut grass. Birds chirped in the distance. But everything felt wrong. Too perfect. Like a movie set built to hide the cracks in the foundation. My mother opened the door before I could knock. "You look beautiful, darling," she whispered, hugging me quickly, her perfume wrapping around me like old memories. Then she added, as she always did, "Your father's in the back with the Donovans." As if that explained the temperature of the room. The foyer was already full of people, relatives, neighbors, former colleagues of my father's who had long since retired, but still somehow made the guest list every year. This wasn't a family reunion. It was a networking gala disguised as a dinner party. Aunt Valerie, my mom's older sister, intercepted me first. "There's my favorite career woman," she cooed, leaning in for cheek kisses. "Still no husband? Come on, Hannah. You're going to age out of options soon." I laughed it off. Better to age out than settle in. She winked and turned to greet someone else. Uncle Henry, a retired dentist, shook my hand like he was closing a business deal. "So you're still in, advertising?" "Brand strategy," I corrected gently. "We work with mid-sized tech companies, real estate firms, consumer brands, anyone looking to evolve." He nodded, clearly having stopped listening after the second word. I spotted Max, making his grand entrance from the French doors. His wife, Claire, wore an off-white pantsuit like she was hosting a charity auction, and their 2 kids were in matching blue outfits that probably cost more than my shoes. My father beamed at him as he arrived. Hugged him, in fact. A full-on, both arms around the shoulders hug. The kind of thing I hadn't received since I was 10. "Nice car, Dad," Max said, clapping him on the back. "Who finally convinced you to upgrade?" My father smirked. "Sometimes you just have to treat yourself, son. Success has its rewards." Not a word about where the car came from. No mention of the fact that I had bought it. Not even a nod in my direction. I stood frozen behind a vase of calla lilies, unsure whether to laugh or scream. Then Leah appeared, wrapping me in a warm hug that lingered for a second longer than usual. "Hey, superstar," she whispered. "I heard about the promotion. That's huge." I smiled. "Thanks. You're the only one who's mentioned it." She pulled back and met my eyes. "That's because you're the only one who earned it." Her voice cracked just slightly on the word earned, and I felt something in my chest tighten. We never talked openly about the dynamic in our family, the favoritism, the silent hierarchies, but we both knew. We always had. A server passed by with flutes of sparkling wine. I grabbed one and took a long sip. Through the massive bay windows, I saw my father leading a group of men in golf shirts and blazers to the SUV, opening doors, pointing at features like a dealership rep. His face was animated.
Proud.
He hadn't smiled like that when I gave it to him. He's done that 3 times already today, Leah muttered, appearing beside me with her own glass of wine. 3 separate tours. Like it just fell from the sky into his lap. Generosity wasn't my motive, I replied without thinking. It was desperation. Leah didn't argue. She just nodded and clinked her glass against mine. Then you deserve something better in return. I watched through the glass as he slid into the driver's seat, inviting one of his friends into the passenger side. He laughed and gestured toward the dashboard. And in that moment, I realized something horrible. I hadn't bought him a car. I had bought him an illusion of power.
And it was working.
By the time the appetizers were circulating, tiny plates of grilled peach salad and smoked Gouda tarts, the air inside the house had thickened with the scent of power dynamics, legacy conversations, and performative warmth. The kind of conversations that my father excelled at steering like a captain through calm waters, always managing to keep the focus on his preferred subjects: business expansion, property values, and his golden son Max. The real dinner hadn't even started, and already, I could feel the slow unraveling of my patience. I clutched my wine glass like it was a lifeline. My father re-entered the house from the garden, flanked by 3 men in matching navy sport coats, all laughing with that rehearsed kind of chuckle reserved for those who want something from each other. His gaze skimmed the room like a head of state acknowledging commoners, smiling at some, nodding at others. Then his eyes met mine.
And passed.
Just passed. No smile. No gesture. Nothing more than the same mechanical glance he gave the caterers in the hallway. I turned quickly and busied myself talking to my cousin Melissa, a third-year medical student whose presence my father barely tolerated. "So, you're doing your residency next year?" I asked with forced cheer. Before she could respond, I felt a hand on my arm. My mother. "Darling," she said, her tone gentle but alert, "your father mentioned the car. That was incredibly generous." "Thank you." Her eyes flickered toward the crowd, making sure no one else was listening. "It was a bit extravagant, don't you think?" I gave her a tight smile. "If it buys me 30 seconds of recognition, I'd say it's underpriced." She blinked, not sure whether to laugh or scold. Then, as if the script demanded it, she smoothly pivoted. "Come say hello to the Hendersons. They just returned from their consulting conference in Copenhagen. They'd love your thoughts on startup branding." Mother always knew how to redirect, to turn emotional discomfort into social grace. That was her power. Not protection. Not confrontation. Just smoothing the surface of churning waters. The formal announcement for dinner followed shortly after, chimes echoing through the halls like a boarding call. The long mahogany dining table was already set like a page out of a magazine. Candles, calligraphy named cards, silverware so polished it glinted. There were exactly 22 seats, each placement a quiet ranking of importance. I found mine near the far end, wedged between a retired executive I barely knew and one of my father's newer business partners. I glanced up the table. Max and Claire were beside my father. Of course. Leah sat near the middle, her position balanced perfectly to keep the peace between the inner circle and the others. My mother, as always, sat at the far opposite end, a queen with a crown but no power. The food began arriving. First course, chilled carrot soup with ginger foam. Everyone murmured polite praise. Then, without needing to raise his voice, my father brought the room to attention simply by lifting his glass. "I want to thank everyone for joining us for another Greystone gathering," he said, standing confidently, his presence commanding despite, or perhaps because of its coldness. "Every year, I'm reminded how proud I am, not just of what I've built, but of what my children are building." He turned to Max. "Your latest commercial property flip is remarkable." I reviewed the projected ROI. "Your numbers are aggressive, but realistic." That's the kind of foresight I hope to pass on. Max gave a modest nod, pretending not to be thrilled. And Leah, he continued, your appointment to the Public Housing Advisory Board? That's meaningful work. And difficult. I'm proud of your sense of service. You've grown into someone people admire. The clinking of glasses, soft applause. Then his eyes swept past me again. No mention. No nod. No acknowledgement. Just silence. I swallowed hard and reached for my water glass. The omission hit harder than an insult. At least insults are acknowledged. This was a dismissal. A deliberate one. The server placed the next course, an herb-encrusted salmon fillet, on the table. I barely noticed it. I stared at my father as he resumed his seat, leaned slightly toward Max, and whispered something that made both him and Claire laugh quietly. My mother attempted to break the silence around me by mentioning my recent promotion to the man on my right. Did you hear about Hannah's big step up? She said, too loudly. Oh, the man replied, tilting his head toward me. Where do you work again? Brandscape, I said, carefully polite. I was promoted to lead strategy director last month. Our team just wrapped a campaign that boosted client revenue by nearly 47% over Q1. He nodded slowly, unimpressed. That's nice. You do ads, then? Before I could answer, my father cut in from halfway up the table. Marketing is fine, but it's all speculative. Flimsy ground. Unlike furniture manufacturing, real products, real revenue. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Every comment, every move was designed to reduce me. When the third course was served, my father lifted another glass. This time of bourbon. The liquid caught the candlelight. His face was flushed now. The wine had loosened him. The mask was slipping. And so was mine. I could feel it. For 32 years, I had played this game. And I was running out of patience. The fourth course was served, a decadent beef tenderloin, resting on whipped potatoes with a red wine reduction, and I couldn't taste a thing. My mouth was dry, my chest tight. I could feel the envelope in my purse like it had a heartbeat of its own, pulsing against my side with every breath. My father had now moved on to discussing zoning permits with a man named Greg Whitmore, a construction consultant I vaguely remembered from prior reunions. The entire table was engaged in this conversation as if nothing else mattered. And in this house, maybe it didn't. Across the table, Leah caught my eye. She gave me a look I'd seen only once before, when I was 19, at another family dinner, and my father had made a joke at my expense in front of Max's new college friends, something about my flaky artistic projects and not everyone being built for success. Back then, she had passed me a napkin with "Ignore him, he's impossible" scribbled on it in eyeliner. This time, there was no napkin. Just a look. One that silently asked, "How much more can you take?" I didn't know the answer, but I was dangerously close to finding out. I had spent years building a resume of accomplishments to present like trophies at this very table. And tonight, I realized none of it would ever matter. Because in Gerald Greystone's world, my worth wasn't based on what I had done. It was based on what I wasn't. His dessert arrived, a ridiculous, towered chocolate soufflé that wobbled when the plates were set down. My fork remained untouched. My father swirled his bourbon, took a long sip, and then, because his cruelty never arrived without warning, he leaned back in his chair and said, "So, Hannah still single?" It was quiet. Too quiet. The woman next to me, one of my father's business contact's wives, smiled nervously. She's beautiful and successful. The men in Silverbridge must be intimidated. I offered a tight smile, ready to respond with something diplomatic, something deflecting. But I didn't get the chance. "She's always been more focused on proving a point," my father said calmly. "Not on building something lasting."
His voice was steady.
Too steady. I recognized the pattern. Some people get angry when they drink. My father got surgical. He took another sip. Family requires sacrifice. Compromise. That's something Hannah never quite understood. She'd rather chase titles than build a family legacy. Every eye at the table shifted toward me. A few guests looked down at their plates. Max smirked. Mother's fingers tightened around her wine glass. Gerald, that's... But he waved her off. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. No one laughed. No one interrupted. So I did. I put down my glass and stood. I didn't slam my chair or yell. I didn't need to. My movements alone caused a ripple, like a match striking dry paper. Forks paused midair. Conversations died. I looked directly at him. My voice came out clear and firm. Thank you for that, Dad, I said, letting the word Dad hang with deliberate sharpness. I've spent 32 years trying to earn your approval. Turns out, that was never possible. He squinted, confused but amused. What's that supposed to mean? I opened my purse slowly. The rustle of paper inside seemed louder than the clinking of cutlery. I pulled out the envelope.
Plain. Sealed.
Unassuming. But inside, it carried the truth that explained everything. I wasn't going to do this here. Not like this, I said, scanning the table. But I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of sitting here and being erased in real time. My mother's face had gone pale. Leah looked stunned. Max looked annoyed. I held up the envelope between two fingers. I got curious a while back. About our family history. Ordered a DNA test. For fun, you know? My father's smirk was gone. I wasn't expecting anything. But what I got back didn't match our supposed lineage. So I double-checked. Took a sample from your hairbrush.
Sent it to a lab.
Full workup. His eyes darkened. Hannah, this isn't the time. Oh, it is, I interrupted, stepping forward and placing the envelope gently on the center of the table, like a dealer laying down an ace. Because you've made this dinner about legacy. About blood. About who belongs at this table. A pause. I met his gaze one last time. And I don't. Then I smiled, calm, sharp, and unshakable. Happy Father's Day. The silence after those words was complete. No one spoke. No one moved. Not even the staff. Then I turned, picked up my purse, and walked away. The hall outside the dining room felt colder than it should have. My heels clicked against the polished tile as I walked, each step echoing like a countdown. I didn't run. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just left. Behind me, voices exploded, overlapping, rising in confusion and shock. I didn't stop to listen. I had nothing else to say. The night air hit me as I stepped onto the stone porch, the glow from the lanterns brushing my arms with gold. I took a deep breath, trying to exhale 3 decades of disappointment in one go. The SUV sat in the circular driveway exactly where my father had positioned it for maximum visibility. Shiny, spotless, like a trophy he hadn't earned. I walked to it calmly, opened the door with the second key fob I had never turned over to him, and slid inside. The leather was still warm from the sun. The scent of newness hadn't faded. But this time, it didn't smell like victory. It smelled like freedom. Through the windshield, I could see figures in the dining room, silhouettes behind glowing windows. One figure darted from the table to the front hallway. The door burst open just as I started the engine. It was my father. He stood there in the doorway, one hand clutching the opened envelope, the other raised slightly, as if he could stop me with a gesture, as if he had any right to any more. He said something, but the engine hummed too smoothly to hear it. His mouth moved, but I didn't care to know what came out. Maybe it was my name. Maybe it was a command. Maybe, for once, it was a question. Too late. I reversed, turned the wheel slowly, and rolled down the long gravel path that had led me to this house so many times before. But this time, I wasn't just leaving a party. I was leaving the entire performance. The mansion grew smaller in my rear-view mirror. The perfectly arranged hedges, the custom-built pergola, the perfectly hung porch lights, it all shrank like a false memory being pulled backward into the fog. The deeper I drove into the dark roads of Silverbridge, the lighter I felt. Not happy. Not yet. But untethered. I didn't go back to the hotel. I pulled off the highway 30 minutes later into the heart of downtown, parked in front of a mid-range hotel, and checked in with nothing but a leather purse and a suitcase of clarity. I gave a fake last name because I wasn't ready for the calls, the door knocks, the questions.
Not yet.
By the time I reached my room, my phone had 17 missed calls and 29 messages. The first 10 were from my mother. Her voice, in the voicemails, started calm. "Hannah, sweetheart, when you have a moment, please call me. I think we should talk." Then nervous. "Darling, I don't know what this test was or what you think it means, but this isn't how families handle things." Then desperate. "There has to be a mistake. Please come back. We need to speak privately." Then broken. "Don't do this. Don't destroy everything we've built because of one test. Gerald is devastated." I didn't listen to the rest. I couldn't. Max had left 2 messages.
Short.
Cold. Legalistic. "You need to return the SUV immediately, or we'll take formal action. That car is registered to Dad." And then, "You've humiliated him in front of half the city. If you care about this family at all, fix it." Quietly. I set the phone down and turned away. Then, a call from Leah. I answered. "Are you okay?" she whispered, and the sound of her voice cracked something in me. It wasn't pity. It wasn't shame. It was worry. Real, unfiltered worry. "I'm fine," I said. "I'm out." She exhaled. "It's chaos here. Total chaos." Dad read the results right at the table. Just opened the envelope and lost it. I imagined it, and for a second, it almost made me smile. "What about Mom?" I asked. "She's locked herself in the bedroom. James is threatening legal action. Dad's yelling. Everyone left except a few nosy neighbors who stayed to help clean up, but just wanted more gossip." I sat down on the edge of the hotel bed, shoes still on. "Leah," I said, "he knew, didn't he? Maybe not the test, but the truth." Her silence was answer enough. "Probably for years," she finally said. "Honestly, I think Mom always worried you'd find out." I closed my eyes. "You're not surprised?" "No," she said quietly. "I'm just sorry you had to carry it alone." There was a pause. Then her voice dropped again. "Is it true? Are you really?" "I am. He's not my biological father. The test confirmed it. Do you know who is?"
No.
"Just that it's not him." Leah exhaled slowly. "Then, Hannah, maybe that's your freedom." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That night, I slept dreamlessly. No images, no memories, no longing. Just silence. Pure, untwisted silence. For the first time in 32 years, I didn't wonder whether I had done enough to be seen. Because now I knew he never wanted to see me at all. The days that followed were strange, like standing in the center of a collapsed building, surrounded by rubble that no longer had the power to crush me. I stayed in that downtown hotel for 5 days, leaving only for coffee and long walks along the boardwalk. I told my agency I needed a personal break. They didn't ask questions. They didn't need to. On the 3rd day, I received a message from an unknown number. It was short, polite, and impossible to ignore. "Hello, Hannah. My name is Daniel Whitaker. I recently learned that I may be your biological father. Evelyn and I knew each other during college. I'd appreciate the opportunity to talk, whenever and however you feel comfortable." I stared at the message for nearly an hour. My mother hadn't mentioned a name. I hadn't asked. But of course she knew I'd want answers eventually. Maybe she'd reached out. Or maybe he had. Either way, this was a name I had never heard, and yet it suddenly carried half of me. I didn't reply right away. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't ready to start something while still detaching from everything else. Later that evening, I finally met my mother at a small cafe near the harbor. I had chosen the place. Neutral ground. No staff that knew our family name. No neighbors. No expectations. She arrived looking older than I remembered. Her hair was tied back neatly, but her eyes were rimmed with the kind of fatigue that sleep couldn't fix. She sat down and didn't order coffee. Just water. Then said very softly, "His name is Daniel. We met during my junior year. He wasn't rich or ambitious. He studied physics. He made me laugh." I listened, watching her hands as she spoke. They fidgeted around the glass of water, tracing the rim over and over like she was holding time itself. When I found out I was pregnant, she said, I told him. He wanted to be involved. But my parents refused. They said he wasn't suitable, that it would ruin everything. And then Gerald came along. He offered to marry you. She nodded, said he didn't care, that he'd raise you like his own. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. And did he? I asked quietly. Her eyes dropped.
He tried.
But he could never forget. Every time he looked at you, I think he saw me with someone else. And I think, deep down, he resented that I had already loved someone before him. We sat in silence. I asked the question that had haunted me the most. Why didn't you protect me? She looked up sharply. I thought I thought keeping the truth hidden would protect all of us. That if we just kept moving forward, it would fade. I wanted to shout, but it didn't. It twisted everything. But I didn't shout, because there was already enough wreckage between us. I left that cafe with no closure, just confirmation. What I had always felt was real. I didn't belong. And I never had.
But now I didn't need to.
I didn't need Max's approval. I didn't need my father's respect. I didn't even need my mother's regret. What I needed was my own life. The next day, I replied to Daniel's message. We arranged a meeting, just coffee, just introductions. We kept it simple. He was kind, thoughtful, nervous, but respectful. You're nothing like I imagined, he said, smiling. You have your mother's eyes, but when you talk about strategy and campaigns, I see my side of the family. We're all obsessively analytical. I laughed for the first time in days. We didn't force a bond. We didn't pretend we were suddenly father and daughter. But we began something real, human and gentle and mutual. A connection based not on history, but on truth. Back in the professional world, things moved forward without hesitation. My boss called to check in, asking if I was ready to return. Hannah, the client insisted you present the new concept yourself, she said. Apparently you're developing a bit of a reputation. I blinked, surprised. What kind of reputation? She chuckled. Strategic. Decisive. Unshakable. Apparently that presentation you gave last quarter made waves. For once, I let the compliment land. No deflection. No comparison to Max. Just pride. In myself. Exactly 6 days after I left the reunion, I received a certified letter from a law firm my father used. It was cold and mechanical, like everything he touched. Ms. Greystone, we are requesting the immediate return of the luxury vehicle currently in your possession. Failure to comply may result in legal action. Furthermore, the statements made at the June gathering may be subject to defamation review. No phone call. No emotion. Just litigation. I contacted my own lawyer and returned the vehicle without protest. I didn't need it. I didn't want it. I had already driven away with the only thing worth keeping, myself. After I returned the SUV, I half expected a knock on my hotel door or another aggressive voicemail from Max, but there was only silence. Cold, instructive silence. The kind my father had mastered. The kind that said, you're not welcome here anymore. And for the first time in my life, that was perfectly fine. The silence wasn't punishment now. It was peace. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding, but not in the way people expected. I didn't go back to my apartment right away. I extended my hotel stay, enrolled in therapy, and started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. Journaling, short essays, observations. I began to organize my thoughts, to untangle the long braid of approval-seeking and pain that had defined so much of my ambition. Leah and I grew closer in a way we never had before. We began having long evening calls, somewhere between heart healing and sisterhood therapy. He's telling people you fabricated the test, she said once, her voice laced with guilt. I'm not surprised, I replied. He's always been better at fiction than facts. She chuckled, then said something that stayed with me. Don't let the lies bring you back into the script. You already wrote a new one. One afternoon, I finally visited Daniel Whitaker again. We walked through a botanical garden on the edge of the city. It was sunny, quiet, the air soft with lavender and sage. He handed me an envelope of photos. Old college group shots, his graduation picture, a few scanned copies of newspaper clippings where he'd been awarded for his engineering innovations.
He was humble about them.
A little awkward, actually. "That one's your grandfather," he said, pointing to a sepia-toned man with wild eyebrows. He was a tinkerer. Built half the clocks in our town from scratch. I traced my fingers along the edge of the image and felt something curious, a sense of belonging that wasn't earned through groveling or pretending.
It just was.
Later, as we sat on a bench overlooking a pond, Daniel said, "You know, if you ever want to meet the rest of the family, they'd love to know you. But there's no pressure. None at all." I smiled. "Thank you. Let's take it one conversation at a time." He nodded. "That's fair. Besides, we've already made more progress than some families do in 30 years. I laughed. Don't I know it? Back in my professional life, I returned to the office like a different version of myself. Colleagues noticed it too. My assistant, Marcy, said, "You've got this aura now. Like you've finally stopped shrinking." And she was right. I wasn't over-explaining my decisions anymore. I wasn't rehearsing every word before entering meetings. I didn't check my phone for validation. I had left the Greystone house behind, but more importantly, I had left behind the version of me that thought that house defined my value. On Thanksgiving, Leah invited me to her home instead of going to the traditional family dinner. "Don't worry," she said over the phone. "I warned everyone. And Dad refused to come." Of course he did. He said your presence would be a disruption. I told him silence is what disrupts people the most. The meal was warm, chaotic, real. Her 2 kids spilled cranberry sauce on their shirts, her husband burned the stuffing, and someone's dog kept stealing rolls off the kitchen counter. And I had never felt more at home. After dinner, as we sat together drinking hot cider, my mother called. Her voice had changed.
Softer. Clearer.
"I want to say something I should have said years ago," she said. I braced myself. "I'm proud of you. Not for what you've done. Not for your career. Not for the money. I'm proud of how you survived us. How you never became what we tried to make you." Tears prickled behind my eyes. "I wish I had protected you," she said. "But I hope you know now you don't need protecting anymore." That night, as I stood under the stars in Leah's backyard, watching her kids chase fireflies with plastic jars, I realized something else. Legacy doesn't come from blood. It comes from courage. The courage to leave. The courage to speak. The courage to stop needing what you'll never receive. 6 months after that dinner, I sold my old apartment and bought a place by the sea. A small loft in a quiet part of the coast. I painted the walls myself. I added plants. I finally unpacked boxes I hadn't touched in years. And one evening, as I sat near the window watching the tide roll in, I wrote this. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is walk away from the story they wrote for you and write a new one, word by word, choice by choice, breath by breath. That was the real inheritance. Not the name, not the wealth, not the SUV, but the clarity to reclaim my life. And the freedom to live it on my own terms. If this story moved you or made you reflect on your own worth, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters here, and we'd love to hear from you. Make sure to subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us of the strength we carry within. Thank you for watching, and always remember, sometimes the greatest healing begins the moment you choose yourself.